All right, so you guys sent in some stuff that's pretty wild, and we're going to take a dive into it today. It really has me thinking about gods, aliens, and demons. We're talking like ancient texts and YouTube rabbit holes and some seriously thought-provoking ideas.
You've got a real mix here. A YouTube video that makes some pretty bold claims about religious history, and then a few articles that explore things like the Nephilim and paganism and ancient mythology. Really fascinating stuff, and it really makes you wonder if there could be like a deeper connection between all these seemingly separate beliefs.
Yeah, like on the surface, gods and aliens and demons seem pretty different. But what if they're not? What if there's a common thread running through all these ideas across cultures and across time? That's what we're going to unpack today.
That's the question that drives this YouTube video for sure. The speaker, Daniel Ayala, he argues that a lot of the beliefs we have about gods and aliens and demons, they actually stem from misinterpretations of historical events. He suggests that a lot of these interpretations have been influenced by what he calls fallen angels.
Okay, so before we go any further, can we just break down this fallen angels concept? I think it's kind of key to understanding where this whole is headed.
Absolutely. In a lot of religious traditions, fallen angels are beings who were once part of the divine realm but rebelled against God and were cast out. Think Lucifer, for instance. Daniel believes that these beings have really influenced human history in a big way, leading people astray from the original truth that he believes is found in Christianity and the Bible.
So in a way, he's suggesting that these fallen angels are actually behind the creation of these alternative belief systems. But how does that tie into gods and aliens specifically?
Well, Daniel claims that these fallen angels are like the source of a lot of the myths and legends about gods and supernatural beings. And as for aliens, he believes that what we perceive as extraterrestrial encounters could actually be interactions with these fallen angels or their offspring, often disguised or just totally misinterpreted.
So we're talking about beings with the power to shapeshift and appear in different forms. I'm already picturing some ancient civilization seeing something like that and thinking, okay, that must be a god.
That's exactly the kind of connection Daniel's making. He even points to the Nephilim as an example. You'll find those mentioned in both the video and that article you shared. Genesis, giants, and pagan gods. They're described as these powerful beings, sometimes giants, born from the union of sons of God, often interpreted as fallen angels, and human women.
Wait, so these Nephilim weren't just some like random mythological creatures. They're actually mentioned in the Bible.
Yes, in Genesis 6.4. And what's really interesting is that they're often described as these mighty men of old or even demigods in some interpretations. That connection to the idea of gods right there is pretty intriguing, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And one of the articles mentions that these Nephilim are often depicted with serpent-like features and unusual skulls. Could that be why ancient people might have mistaken them for something otherworldly? Maybe even what we would call aliens today.
It's certainly possible. If you imagine seeing a being that just doesn't fit into your understanding of the world, with those kinds of features, it's not hard to see how myths and legends could be born. And those myths, passed down through generations, they could evolve into the stories of gods and supernatural beings we have today.
Okay, so now I'm really curious about how this ties into the pre-flood world. The sources talk about this time when humanity was supposedly more advanced than we are today, and they coexisted with these fallen angels and Nephilim. What kind of advanced civilization are we talking about here?
Well, the sources mention all sorts of things: weapons, enchantments, astrology, even advanced knowledge of natural phenomena. It really paints a picture of a world where the lines between science and magic and the supernatural were all blurred.
And it's implied that this pre-flood era ultimately led to God's decision to flood the earth. Was it because of this mixing of humanity and fallen angels, this forbidden knowledge being spread?
Exactly. The sources suggest that the world became corrupted, moving further from God's will. And the flood is presented as a kind of reset button, wiping the slate clean, so to speak.
But what about the knowledge from that pre-flood world? Did it just disappear? Or was some of it passed down, maybe becoming the basis for some of the beliefs we see in different cultures?
That's where things get even more interesting. The sources suggest that while much was lost, some of that pre-flood knowledge did survive, but it became distorted over time. This is especially true among the descendants of Noah's son Ham.
Hold on, so we're talking about the flood, this ancient knowledge, and now specific lineages. This is getting complex, but I'm hooked. Tell me more about this Ham connection.
Well, according to the sources, the descendants of Ham are linked to the rise of paganism in the post-flood world. They point to Nimrod, the son of Cush, who's described as an incredibly powerful and rebellious leader. He's the one who built the Tower of Babel, remember? That ultimate symbol of human defiance against God.
Oh, wow. The Tower of Babel. It all ties together. So are they saying that Nimrod was somehow influenced by this distorted pre-flood knowledge? or maybe even had direct contact with these fallen angels or Nephilim.
There's a detail in the YouTube video that some believe Nimrod actually inherited Nephilim DNA, and they even go so far as to connect him to the Illuminati, calling him their first Grand Master.
Whoa, the Illuminati. Okay, now we're going deep down the rabbit hole. But before we get lost in conspiracy theories, I want to understand more about this rise of paganism.
Right, and that's where this whole Babylonian Trinity concept comes in. It's this recurring theme in a lot of pagan religions, the idea of a father god, a mother god, and a son god.
Like Odin, Joro, and Thor in Norse mythology. I've definitely heard of that trinity.
Exactly. And you see similar structures in other cultures, too. Ra, Isis, and Horus in Egyptian mythology, Jupiter, Diana, and Apollo in Roman. It's a pattern that repeats across different cultures and time periods.
Is that just a coincidence?
Yeah.
Or are the sources suggesting that there's something more deliberate at play here?
Well, the YouTube video argues that this recurring theme points to a deliberate demonic strategy to deceive humanity.
Demonic deception. That's a heavy concept.
Mm.
Can you unpack that a bit more for me and for our listener before we move on?
It is a complex idea. Essentially, the argument is that these demons, including Satan himself, they can appear as angels of light, inspiring false prophets and movements to lead people away from what Daniel believes is the true God. It's a bit like a cosmic con game, with the stakes being your eternal soul.
So it's not just about these beings appearing in like physical forms like we talked about with the Nephilim. It's about influencing beliefs and entire religious systems.
That's right. The video draws a direct line from this idea of demonic deception to the origins of some religions, like Mormonism and Islam. They talk about Joseph Smith and Muhammad having encounters with beings they believe to be angelic, but Daniel suggests they were actually demons in disguise.
Wow, that's a pretty controversial claim. I can see how that would be upsetting to people who follow those faiths. But even putting specific religions aside, this idea of demonic deception raises a bigger question for me, and I bet for our listener too. How does this concept change the way we view religious history and the diversity of beliefs across cultures?
It's a profound question. If you accept the premise, it makes you wonder if some of the differences and conflicts between religions are actually rooted in misunderstandings or even deliberate manipulation by these malevolent forces.
Right, like maybe these different belief systems aren't actually that different at their core, but they've been twisted and distorted over time by these outside influences. It makes you think about the nature of truth and how easily it can be manipulated.
And the video doesn't stop there. It also suggests that practices like Buddhism, while often seen as peaceful and introspective, can also lead to demonic encounters. If people open themselves to the spiritual realm without seeking the true God.
Okay, so now I have to ask about the elephant in the room, aliens. The video explicitly states that aliens are actually demons. It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but it actually fits surprisingly well with these ancient beliefs we've been talking about.
It does, doesn't it? Especially when you consider that the sources emphasize the shape-shifting abilities of demons. You know they could appear in any form they choose. And what would be more shocking and unexplainable to ancient people than something that seemed to come from the stars?
It's like the idea of aliens is our modern way of interpreting those ancient encounters. Instead of gods descending from Mount Olympus, we have visitors arriving in flying saucers, but maybe it's the same underlying phenomenon, just seen through a different lens.
That's a thought-provoking idea. It really makes you question how much of what we believe is shaped by the way we interpret the unknown. And speaking of interpretations, there's one more point in the video that I think we need to address.
The video doesn't shy away from controversy, does it? They present evolution as a straight-up satanic lie, designed to undermine belief in the Bible, specifically in the idea of a pre-flood world.
It's a bold claim, and it definitely highlights the tension that often exists between scientific and biblical interpretations of history, and it's going to resonate differently with different people, depending on their existing beliefs.
Definitely. Some people might see it as a direct attack on science, while others might find it confirms their existing skepticism about evolution. It's tricky territory. But it's important to acknowledge these different perspectives.
Absolutely. And it ultimately challenges us and our listener to grapple with some fundamental questions. How do we reconcile these seemingly conflicting viewpoints? Does the possibility of a pre-flood civilization, with its advanced technology and interaction with these non-human beings, challenge our understanding of human history?
These sources really are pushing us to think critically about what we believe and why. They're raising questions that don't have easy answers. It's a bit unsettling, to be honest.
It can be. But I think there's also something exhilarating about it. We're being asked to step outside of our comfort zones, to consider possibilities that we might have dismissed before. It's a reminder that there's always more to learn, always more to explore.
So let's circle back to our original question. Is there a hidden connection between ancient gods, modern beliefs about aliens, and this idea of demonic deception?
Based on these sources, the answer seems to be a resounding yes. They argue that many religions and beliefs about the supernatural might stem from misinterpretations of historical encounters with fallen angels and their offspring, the Nephilim, and they suggest that demons might be actively deceiving humanity, appearing as gods or even aliens to lead us away from the truth.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. What stands out to you from all this?
What's really striking to me is the way these sources connect these ancient narratives to our modern world. Yeah, they're not just talking about myths and legends from a distant past. They're suggesting that the same forces that supposedly influenced ancient civilizations might still be at work today, shaping our beliefs and perceptions in ways we might not even realize.
It's almost like they're saying that history is repeating itself, just with different costumes and special effects.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? And it leads to another, even bigger question. If these arguments hold any truth, how does that change our understanding of the world, the nature of belief, and the importance of seeking truth?
That's a question that really makes you pause, doesn't it? It's like we've been handed a whole new lens to view history, religion, and even our own place in the universe.
It challenges us to question everything, to look beyond the surface, and consider the possibility that there are forces at play that we might not fully comprehend.
It's almost like a call to action, urging us to dig deeper, research, to explore these ideas for ourselves and come to our own conclusions, to not just accept what we've been told, but to really seek out the truth, wherever it may lead.
Precisely. And it highlights the importance of critical thinking, of not just accepting information at face value, especially when it comes to something as significant as our belief systems.
Because if these sources are even partially right, it means that the stakes are incredibly high. We're not just talking about academic debates here. We're talking about potentially being deceived on a cosmic scale.
And that brings us back to the power of these sources. Even if you don't agree with everything they say, they make you think, they challenge your assumptions, and they force you to confront some really big questions about the nature of reality and the forces that might be shaping our world.
This dive has definitely left me with more questions than answers. But it's been an incredible journey. It's made me realize how much I don't know and how much there is still to explore.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? There's always more to learn, more to discover. And who knows what other intriguing connections and hidden truths are waiting to be uncovered if we just keep asking questions and keep searching.
So to our listener out there, we encourage you to continue this on your own. Check out the sources we discussed, do your own research, and see where it leads you. You might be surprised by what you find.
And remember, the most important thing is to keep an open mind. Be critical of the information you encounter and always be willing to question everything.
Because in a world where information is so readily available, the ability to discern truth from falsehood is more crucial than ever.
That's a great point. And with that in mind, we'll wrap up this dive.
We hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did. And if you have any thoughts or questions, or even additional sources you think we should check out, we'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, keep seeking truth and questioning everything.